And for more on what the end of the IPO suspension means for Chinese markets, we're now joined by Jiahe Chen, Equity Strategy Analyst at Cinda Securities. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi there. So the IPO market has not seen a listing since October of 2012. This freeze should have the markets back up by January. What are the consequences of this?
We have already saw the consequences that blue chips companies are coming up. On the other hand, small companies are coming down. The reason is quite simple because in the past, if you look across the global markets, you can see that most of the small cap companies, they would have a low valuation regarding the PB ratio compared with blue chip companies. But for Chinese market, it's like small cap companies are trading at 2 or 3 times of the valuation of blue chips. That's because there is a limited amount of small cap companies. The rest of them are not allowed to be listed unless this IPO is started again. Therefore, people are speculating on that. They're not worrying because there's so much money, there are so few companies. But if this IPO is open again, they have to face a problem that they're not worth it.
So there's going to be a flood of companies, and the concern is that that money will now be diluted across so many new shares, and that's going to take away from the liquidity of the markets at present.
That is a concern, yes.
Okay, what do you make of the timing of this decision then? Considering the Chinese markets are having a bit of a liquidity crunch at the moment, why lift the IPO now? Do you think this was a good idea timing-wise?
Regarding the liquidity, no, they should wait a better time for that when the liquidity is much more abundant. But there are 2 things that are pushing it. The first is that the IPO has been stopped for so long.
Right.
You won't need a market if you can't even get companies listed, you can't even raise capital there, you don't need market there. The other is that the third plenum has been there. It has been said we need to reform the IPO system, we need to go to a registered system, that no more permission is needed. Therefore, they have to do it right away.
Another issue that we saw Vivi mention in her report is that whilst the small cap companies have been hurt, we've seen financial stocks do very well, and the idea is that they'll have more business. Do you agree with that?
That is only part of the story because you can explain that with the reopening of the IPO, there would be more businesses for the securities companies, but this theory cannot explain why IPO would do any favor to the banks, which rose as well. This is because, as I said before, people have been speculating on small cap companies, but now they say that they can no longer speculate on them, and they see a very low valuation with the blue chips. So they have to put their money somewhere. So this is a place that they're going to.
With regards to the IPO listing criteria, the oversight model has shifted somewhat, more from authorities to a more market-driven one, where the investor and the market will dictate the terms, and it's up to the companies to be more open and disclosing, more of an American system.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think that would be great because in the past, what the Chinese CSRC has been worrying investors would be losing money. They are quite concerned about that. They try to do their duty, that is, they try to exclude the bad companies from the beginning. But as a result, is that investors started to believe that the authority will be doing everything. So we just speculate. We don't really care about the quality of the company. So at the last, you have unmatured investors after 20 years of opening of the market. So I think this would mean that we would have much more experienced investors in the future.
More investor due diligence, let the buyer beware?
Yeah, they should do that. Yeah.
So, okay, what are other more significant criteria that have changed with regards to the IPO regulations?
The other is actually we saw that they're starting to treat what we call backdoor listing as IPO. That is a very important thing because in the past, if a listed company go into a very unprofitable scenario, that investors would still speculate on that because they think another company might use it as a backdoor listing target, but no longer in the future. That's why you can see that small cap companies has been dropping.
With this IPO suspension being lifted, do you expect the markets to be relatively volatile, at least for the next month until the suspension goes into effect, the lift of the suspension goes into effect?
Quite so, I would think so, because it is not only the volatility that you want to look at, but currently because small cap companies are still trading at so high a valuation compared with blue chip companies, you can see that their performance would definitely be worse than the blue chip companies, and it might come to something like 30 or 40% drop.
Would you invest in any particular Chinese sectors right now?
Well, personally, I'm not allowed to invest because of the regulation, but the sectors I would favor would be those, you go for a few criteria. First, it has to be blue chip companies because small companies are so expensive. Second, it has to get a low valuation. And third, it can't be an industry that have overcapacity like steel or cement. I would recommend like securities or banks, insurance, airports, some transportation, some oil industry, and these kind of companies.
Right, bank stocks poised to do pretty well with this whole IPO suspension, right?
For the moment, yes.
For the moment. All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there for the moment, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jiahe Chen, Equity Strategy Analyst at Cinda Securities.